Jeff, so great to spend some time with you today. We came together very serendipitously, both of us having some knowledge of and some reputation for social and branding within Microsoft. But I'm very grateful that we got put together. And I was very taken immediately with some of your philosophies around personal branding and how you have positioned yourself as a thought leader. I want to really focus on personal branding to start. A lot of people talk about personal brand, right? And I think where some of us, where we struggle is how do we get started? What do I want to be known for? How do I best establish that brand and that reputation? I know you have some thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear how you've approached personal brand successfully.
Sure. And the idea of personal branding isn't something that's really new. What's really changed is because of the pandemic, the need and push for it to be digitally focused. Because now all of a sudden, especially when everyone has been working from home, you get looked up more than you ever have done. And you may not realize what your brand is exuding digitally versus what you may have been able to control 4 years in the past, where it was always your personal interactions with people. And it was much more controllable that way. So to focus digitally, you have to think about it a different way. And there's three questions whenever I go over personal branding with someone that I challenge them. They're very simple questions, but they'll be difficult for you to answer. The first is, what topic or topics do you want to be known for? In my case, it's digital transformation, it's Industry 4.0, it's AI, and it's IoT. Those are the topics that I really want to be known for. The second question I challenge people is, what skills do you want to be known for? Because you may have the same topics as me, but your skills may be entirely different. And as an example, the things that I want to be known for as part of that is a good strategic thinker, very good at business strategy and go-to-market strategy as part of that. I also want to be known as a public speaker, a good public speaker as part of that. Those are examples of some of the skills that you can choose to focus on. All right, but it may be leadership. It may be a seller. It may be a good communicator. It could be a variety of skills that you have, but you need to figure out what skills do you want to be known for. And the last is what identity you actually want to have associated with you. For me, it's to be fun and to be approachable. I actually want people on LinkedIn as my platform to feel very comfortable being able to reach out to me. And the fun, it exudes through in the post I do. I mean, I dress up in costumes for some of my posts, and that's what I'm going for as part of that. Those are three simple questions, but they're hard for people to have to answer and have to narrow it down to what they want to be known and seen as.
I love that, Jeff. Couple of key elements that you pointed out that I think really resonated with me. First off, people are going to research you. I've been in sales for the preponderance of my career, and we read statistics that 57% of the buying process is often completed before a seller is engaged. Guess what? If they're going to do business with you, they're going to research you. They're going to look you up, and you've got to make sure that how you portray yourself to your audience is indicative of what you want to be known for, which is exactly what you outlined. What are those key elements that you want to be known for? Be intentional about your brand. Control the controllables. You can control a lot of the content and the things that you put out there, what you create, how you convey yourself. I mean, that can come from the picture that you choose to use on your LinkedIn profile, all the way to the types of mediums that you choose. Because I think that's another key element. Thinking about the mediums. I look at the mediums like a stock portfolio. Not everybody's going to be comfortable doing video. Not everybody's going to be comfortable blogging. Not everybody's going to be comfortable having multiple different social profiles, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or whatever these are. But all of them have their merits because your audience may be there depending on what you're trying to create, what brand you're trying to convey. And so I think you just got to think about your mediums. Where is your audience? What type of content are they engaging in? But the other element is, how are you going to be a differentiator? What's your unique superpower? I think the key element that you want to make sure you play up is you want to parlay your passions and what matters to you and what you want to be known for into that content and be intentional about how you construct it in the mediums that you're going after. You may not be comfortable creating in all of them, but the more you create quality content and you consistently leverage it, and the quantity of these mediums or the outreach, you're going to enhance the probability by which you'll be able to engage with your ideal audience.
I completely agree. It's funny, you brought up two things that I always like to teach people as well when it comes to their actual profile. In their about section, there's two things I would always look for as part of this. And really, it should be probably the only two things, with maybe a few exceptions more. What are you passionate about, and what makes you unique? And those are things that are difficult for people to answer. Everyone can answer their passions. Most people don't put it in their profile. What makes you unique, you're going to have to think about.
I like that a lot. And hopefully everybody watching will look at their profile in a little bit of a different way. I know that I am. I've learned a ton just by, talking with you. And I've shared with you, Jeff, historically, I've struggled a little bit. I want to talk a little about thought leadership because I've struggled historically. Years ago, my goal was to be a thought leader in the sales and sales leadership realm. And I have done a lot of, public speaking and writing around those topics and career and investing in that element. But at the same time, much of my day job is, I'll have executive touch points with senior executives in the healthcare industry who couldn't care less about my prowess or lack thereof in the sales realm, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, they probably would want me to sell internally and advocate for them. But my point is that these are two very distinct and different personas that I'm trying to manage. And so as you approach thought leadership, what would you say are some of the key elements that you would want to think about, and how would you execute when you're purporting to be a thought leader?
So it's a great question. It's kind of funny because I have a little bit of a struggle with that as well. Because as you noticed, my topics I mentioned were Industry 4.0, digital transformation, AI, IoT. Those are all centrally, themed as part of it. But what's the second most popular thing I get asked to talk about? LinkedIn, which has nothing to do with those. So I have that same battle that kind of comes up. This particular element of thought leadership, and then being asked about, how do you do what you do on LinkedIn as a part of it? So now the thought leadership is a topic I actually very much enjoy with it, because I had to figure this out myself. And then I had to teach it to other people. And it was really when I taught it to other people, I had to processize it and figure out the ways that you do it instead of just, kind of learning it on your own as a part of it. And the first thing I always encourage people to do, and I define this my way, is to separate out what I call a thought leader. And you don't have to adopt my definition, but I separate out a thought leader from a subject matter expert or a credible expert or a technical wizard. They're all basically the same thing. All right. And the main difference between the two that I define it is the subject matter expert knows a lot. It's a reactive position. So this is someone that if you use LinkedIn as the medium, you're not necessarily posting all the time, but everything exudes about your profile that you really know what you're talking about. You're still very active on LinkedIn, but you're not necessarily posting. The thought leader, the main difference is that's a purposeful pursuit. You are out there in the industry broadcasting what you're doing. You're trying to insert yourself places as being one of the leaders in the space. And that's kind of the main difference between those two. But where I actually got my basis of definition for a thought leader was something I actually got from Aristotle's Modes of Persuasion. And he broke it up into logos, ethos, and pathos. And I really liked the way that was done and just kind of applied it to the, our century. But logos is really about expert insights, which is where you need to be conducting your own research, producing new and novel ideas, and writing articles, writing papers, and doing stuff that's a little unique to the industry. The second is your personal brand, all right, which is kind of what we just talked about, having those 3 questions answered. That's the ethos. And the third is the pathos, which is taking a stand. And this is the harder part for some people. Taking a stand means having opinions, broadcasting those opinions, inspiring people, and maybe even sparking a bit of controversy. Because if you're just saying the same thing, let's say, for example, I'm just defining something out there, you're never going to really be seen as the thought leader unless you put your opinion behind it. I believe this. I think this is not good. And that's what will help you with the taking a stand. And those 3 things are kind of what formulated my vision of what a thought leader should be.
That's super powerful, Jeff. And I'd be remiss if we didn't dive in a little bit more on the LinkedIn element. And here's why. I feel like, and I couldn't agree more, first off, that there's an opportunity, a real opportunity to be provocative and start conversations and create really meaningful relationships with these social media platforms, LinkedIn being a great one. It exponentially increased over the last couple of years, obviously, because digital was the only route we had in a lot of cases. But, for both of us, I think this was something that it's had a very distinct impact on us, but in totally different ways. Years ago, I was at a small consultant firm before joining Microsoft, and I was in an attempt to create executive relationships that we and I did not have. I was leveraging LinkedIn to create these relationships, and it was working. When I came to Microsoft, it was often, we were part of a transformation ourselves. I have Satya's book on my bookshelf, and, page 88, he talks about, the impetus for our transformation over the last 8 years. And the biggest challenge that we had was finding relationships outside of where we had historically done business, in IT and procurement, and understanding, some of these business drivers and business needs, and truly partnering and integrating with, the platforms that they had in place already. And in order to do that, you had to create those relationships. And that's what I kept hearing is, our problem is we don't have these relationships by default. I viewed LinkedIn as a mechanism to solve that problem. And that's how I started leveraging it. It was kind of an anomaly back then. I remember very distinctly before I had the results to back it up, people were like, oh, well, Carson, he's just using LinkedIn and this and that. Well, as I started to get meetings, and now over the years that I have hundreds of millions of dollars in deals that have been influenced by LinkedIn, or deals that wouldn't have existed had it not been for LinkedIn, I started to be asked to coach and train on some of these types of things. And it was at first kind of a small bubble. It was different teams. Now it's globally, and very serendipitous as well that, like you and I have shared historically, becoming known for some of these elements, but also being seen as a thought leader, sharing, being provocative, starting conversations, those types of things, and sharing content has become very much a part of my brand. And it's frankly been very much attributed to what got me to where I am today, because it's a differentiator. It's not something that everybody else is doing. Now, your approach has been different because a lot of your surgence has come just over the last year plus, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'd love to dial in a little bit more to your process. Why did you do it? What has been the impact, and what have been your key learnings?
Yes, it is true. I've only been using LinkedIn, I would say, actively since it was actually February of last year, so 13 months. If you were to send me a message on LinkedIn in 2020, it'd take me like 4 months to respond. I didn't check it every day. I really wasn't active on it. I had maybe I think it was 870 or so connections, and I think today I'm like 18,000. So it dramatically improved over that. So before we look at LinkedIn, if we look at kind of why something needed to change, the pandemic is what drove all this. If the pandemic didn't happen, I don't think I would be on LinkedIn where I am today. So in my previous role at my company, I led the marketing efforts. And it was one of the big things that I looked at and thought was missing was the fact that everyone all of a sudden can't meet people. And with that, you lose networking and you lose education, which are the two main reasons that people go to events: to network and to learn something. Where did they all go? And now part of this was anecdotal and part of this was statistically backed. Everyone went to LinkedIn. And now the part that's anecdotal is that the evidence actually shows people went to LinkedIn. And what's ironic, or it's more coincidental, is that the higher you are up in organizations, the more you went on LinkedIn. So generally speaking, VPs were on it more than directors, on it more than managers, more than individual contributors. The higher you went up, the actual more you were on it. And what you went there for was education, which is why if you look at the engagement activity per level, it went up higher by the higher you are in the organization. And what was absorbed the most was content that was educational. All right. Now, part of the reason why I also think LinkedIn took off is because of personal guilt. People don't feel personal guilt when they play on LinkedIn. People feel personal guilt if they play on Facebook during the business day as part of that. So if you're on LinkedIn during the day and you feel better about it, you're going to be using it more than checking Facebook during lunch or, checking something else like that. So you're on it more. So because of those things coming together, I made a concerted effort that me personally and my company at the time, we have to be more on LinkedIn. There's no events happening, which means there's no easy way for education. The only way you can do it is online. And are you the person that's going to be doing it online? All right. And LinkedIn is that online place that everyone's going to. So that was my reason for choosing the platform of LinkedIn. The other complementary reason why I liked LinkedIn so much compared to, let's say, for example, Twitter, is because LinkedIn has the whole added connection of social selling and social networking. Even if you're not a seller, social networking. I'm going to broaden social selling to be social networking, because individual messages to individual people are just as powerful as posts and comments. Those are the lines between public for branding, which is posts and comments, and then your social networking, which is individual messages to individual people. That is missing on those other platforms because you can't connect with people the same way you can. You can look people up. Where do you go look people up? You don't go to Twitter to look people up. You go to LinkedIn to look them up. That's where then you can connect, send a message. Even if you never update your profile, connect, send a message. So when you combine those two together, why not make that your platform that you also happen to be posting on, because they're all your connections?
The capabilities are incredible. You nailed it, Jeff. That ability to go out, find your audience, find out about your audience, create a relationship, stay top of mind, and stay in touch. I actually found, because I was connected with a lot of folks pre-pandemic that I was working with from a partner or a client perspective, I found that at the onset of the pandemic, a lot of LinkedIn, the value for me was just even sending those check-in messages, or, now you can leverage video or you can leverage audio to send them something more personalized. The capabilities are amazing. With a couple of clicks, I can invite 1,000 people a week to an event, to a webinar that we're doing, or I can send newsletters very easily. And so it's swift ways where I can stay in contact and in touch, send something of value, show up with value, but not sell, not pester, not be a burden. Because like you said, people are showing up to LinkedIn to learn, and we can do the exact same thing. Now, as we kind of wrap up, I'd love to hit on anything else that you might want to touch on. But one thing that I'd love to hit on is, if I'm watching this today and I'm realizing, hey, yes, I absolutely need to approach my digital profile and persona in a different way. How do you recommend somebody get started?
So it's a good question. We're going to get back to, you need to answer the 3 questions about your brand. Then you need to decide, do you want to be a thought leader, a subject matter expert, or neither as part of that? All right. And that could be a good example as a engineer. You may want to be recognized as subject matter expert. You may not. As a salesperson, you may want to be recognized as a seller, or let's say a problem solver, or you may be recognized as, I'm really smart on this subject that is not sales. Either of them are, all of them are okay. You need to figure out what that is for you. And then you want to make sure that everything in your profile exudes that. What most people do is they replicate their resume, and it's not meant to be a replication of your resume, where they literally just put in there about, experienced, leader in this subject, have these skills. And then in their actual experience for their jobs, they're putting their responsibilities. That doesn't really matter to anyone except a recruiter. It doesn't actually matter to the people that are looking at your profile, which could be customers, partners. It could be who knows what, people out there that are going to be clicking on your particular profile. You want to talk about the things that exude your brand. So if you say that one of the things that makes me unique is I'm very good at explaining complex subjects simply, then put that in there and put what you've done with it. Now, if you don't know where to start with it, I recommend, here's the basic recommendation I have for your profile for each job, for your experience section. You should write what your charge was. What was your mission that you were given? Most people go right to the responsibility. I was responsible for, let's say it's sales, selling $100 million. That's different than saying my charge was to digitally transform customers. Now, my responsibility happened to be to sell $100 million, but my charge, my mission was to digitally transform customers, as an example. I'm just making that one up. Then put your impact. What impact did you have? Now that could be a variety of things. It may or may not be how you're graded at your company. It may not be your KPIs that give you a bonus or not, but it is the thing that should exude back what your brand is. My impact. So if I'm trying to be seen as a, someone strategically minded, I need to talk about the impact my strategy had on whatever it is that I was doing. So those could be some, I would say, relatively simple, but one-time things that you can do to help change the way that you're viewed in front of whoever is going to look you up. And I don't remember the statistic, but it was something like 87% of people get looked up before you do business with them, like a staggeringly high number. And if you ever want to look, it's one of the statistics right on your LinkedIn page. You can click who's looked at my profile. I guarantee even if you don't use LinkedIn, it's never zero. Someone is looking you up, even if you don't go on LinkedIn yourself.
It's very good food for thought. I love that because that's practical application of how people can do it different today. And it's a work in progress. Like, it's never done. I wouldn't say that I'm updating my LinkedIn profile on a daily basis as far as, just different attributes, but certainly probably on a quarterly basis. If there are some key drivers or different charges that that I've become a part of, different projects, whether it's cultural transformation or just a distinct impact that I've had with a client. These are things that I make sure that are exemplified. I think the key element is, if you're thinking about it, does your profile and the mediums that you choose to leverage as a part of your digital brand and your personal brand, do they exude, as you said, your unique superpower, your differentiator? How is somebody going to look at that and say, wow, this is the unique element that this person brings to bear, the outcomes that you drive, that your audience is going to ultimately care about? That's part number one. Part number two, I often try to task myself with, what are the relationships that you need or want to create personally or professionally to achieve your goals over a given time frame? We just started a new year not that long ago. And so the key element is, like, I challenged my team this year. Think about the goals that you have. If it's projects that you want to see progress in, deals that you want to drive, what are the key relationships that you're going to need this year to get those done? And how are you going to go out and proactively create those, and not just create relationships with those influencers, but also with the influencers of those influencers? How are you going to stay at the pulse of what matters to your audience, leveraging these tools? The beauty is you can go out and follow these organizations. You can follow these people. You can set up alerts to alert you when something happens. And so you can see when there's movement in the C-suite, or when posts are made by these organizations that you care about. And those types of things can really inform your actions. Phenomenal discussion, Jeff. I know we're coming up on time. Anything else that you would want to touch on before we sign off today?
No, I think this is a good start. I think it's really, people need to be aware of the power of the tool and the power of their brand. And a good start, even if you don't know the answers to your questions, why don't you just go ask a few people in the industry, not just your friends, but that see you out on a daily basis in your professional world, and ask them, what do you think my subjects are? What do you think my skills are? And what do you think my brand identity is? And see if it's what you want. If it is, you're in a good start. If it's not, you may have an eye-opening moment to go, wow, that's what people think of me.
I love that. That is a phenomenal place to start. Jeff, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Phenomenal session. We're going to have to do this again sometime. I'm always learning every time we speak. And thanks for the time and the tips.
You're welcome. Thanks, Carson.
Take care.